cold open, borrowed privacy.
These photographs borrow the language of privacy. A bath, a boudoir, a woman dressing or half undressing. But the camera is not trespassing here. It has been invited in from the start. Every gesture is measured. Every detail is arranged. What looks intimate is already a performance for the lens.
Chapter 1. Not nude, but not innocent.
These women are not fully undressed, and that is precisely the point. The photographs do not depend on nudity. They depend on approach, on the slow management of what may be seen. A stocking, a calf, the edge of a slip, a skirt lifted just high enough to become legible as suggestion. What matters here is not the revelation of the body, but the careful staging of partial access to it. These images operate through fragments. They isolate the areas that can carry erotic charge without surrendering the whole figure. The result is neither innocent portraiture nor full exposure. It is a visual threshold, the body presented as something almost available, and therefore made more compelling by what remains withheld.
Chapter 2. The studio invents privacy.
In these images, the setting does more than provide background. It creates the conditions of intimacy. A bath, a mirror, a curtain, a small domestic interior. Each element helps transform the photograph into something that feels private. But this privacy is not being discovered by the camera. It is being assembled for it. The room, the furniture, the gesture of dressing or half undressing, all of it works together to suggest a moment of seclusion. Yet the scene is not withdrawn from view. It is built for view. What we are looking at is not private life, but private life already translated into image.
Chapter 3. The body learns to pose.
Here, the body begins to behave differently. It no longer appears as something merely glimpsed or half concealed. It has started to pose. A lifted leg, a turned waist, a tilted head, a hand placed just so. Each gesture gives the figure a new clarity for the camera. The body is being taught how to appear, not simply as flesh, but as composition. A chair can sharpen the line of the back. A skirt can frame the leg. A prop can redirect attention and give the pose its excuse. These images do not only present women as attractive, they build a repeatable syntax of attractiveness itself.
Chapter 4. Stage women, reproducible desire.
At this point, the image no longer borrows the language of privacy. It speaks openly in the language of performance. These women are presented not as secluded figures, but as stage personalities, named, styled, and made for recognition. The costume is more explicit, the pose more declarative, the gaze more willing to meet the viewer. What had earlier been suggested through interiors and partial undressing is now reconfigured as public display. And yet the photograph still does something crucial. It lifts performance out of the theater and gives it a second life in circulation. A dancer, a singer, a revue star becomes a card, a keepsake, an image that can be owned, collected, and seen again. Desire here is no longer merely staged, it is reproduced. What the theater made visible, the photograph made repeatable.
Chapter 5. Costume, fantasy, permission.
By now, costume begins to do a different kind of work. It does not simply decorate the body. It changes what the image is allowed to show. Wings, veils, drapery, theatrical accessories, signs of the exotic, all of them move the figure away from ordinary social space and into a zone of fantasy. And once the image enters that zone, the terms of visibility shift. More of the body can appear, because what is being offered is no longer framed as everyday exposure, but as performance, role, spectacle, or dream. Fantasy does not conceal desire here. It gives desire a more acceptable form in which to be seen. The body becomes more visible here precisely by ceasing to appear ordinary.
Chapter 6. From intimacy to commodity.
By now, the photograph has moved beyond performance alone. It is no longer just preserving an appearance, it is helping to market one. Here, sensuality is packaged in forms that can be printed, repeated, exchanged, and sold. Sometimes the woman herself is the attraction. Sometimes she helps transfer attraction to something else, a brand, a product, a style, a fantasy of modern life. What earlier appeared as intimacy or pose or stage presence now acquires a sharper economic edge. The image is designed not only to be looked at, but to hold attention, travel easily, and attach desire to circulation. This is where the sensual photograph begins to look unmistakably modern, not simply as spectacle, but as visual merchandise. The modern image does not simply circulate desire, it packages it.
Final chapter, the erotics of almost.
Looking back across these images, one thing becomes clear. Their power does not come from complete revelation. It comes from control over how revelation is delayed. A private room, a lifted hem, a trained pose, a stage costume, a printed card. Each of these offers a different route toward the same effect. The body is made visible, but never all at once and never without form. It appears through thresholds, through gesture, framing, costume, repetition, suggestion. What these photographs refine is not nakedness itself, but the management of approach. They teach the viewer to desire not only what is shown, but what remains just out of reach. That is why they still feel modern. Their logic is not the logic of exposure, but the erotics of almost.
If this brought something to light, please like, subscribe, and leave a comment below.